on blast.
And we will not leave that part in.
No.
So people will be like, wait, what were they just talking about?
That's this. I'm going to start the podcast when I edit it with we're going to cut that out. Because that's just the kind of difficult mood I'm in this week. I'm John Chidley Hill.
And I am Sheldon Alexander.
And this is You Killed It, the busiest podcast that reviews the challenge.
Woo, yeah. This one was a tough one. I know we're recording this right now on Friday afternoon, and there's probably a lot of people that are, we saw some messages actually that were like, I missed something, where's the pod?
Yeah.
You just like real work took over for a bit, and the real world television show that turned into the challenge. I was trying to make a link there and it didn't work. See, that's how frazzled I am. Normally I can like Euro step through those, Euro step through and make my cliches and all that. And see, I messed up already. I'm sorry, guys. I promise to improve on the rest of this pod.
We do want to thank everyone that reached out to say, where's the podcast? Did I miss something? Off the top of my head, I know that longtime listener Eric was wondering where it was, and we are sorry. A very Canadian thing to say. We're sorry. It's just Sheldon and I have both had very busy professional weeks. If you follow us on Twitter, you can see it and see what it's all about. And hey, work is a blessing. We both know we're fortunate.
Yes.
This is a first world problem.
Straight first world
We're
problem.
not complaining. It's just we're working opposite hours. Like I start work some days around the time that Sheldon is coming home from work. So it's sort of hard to make it blend. But I'm excited to see you, Sheldon. I love seeing your face.
Aww.
And we're always happy and thrilled to record and chat to our listeners. So sorry, it's been a hectic week, guys. It's nothing personal. It's us. It's not you.
Yeah, it's not you. It's me.
The other thing that we have to talk about before we get to this week's episode of Double Agents is, of course, the trailer has dropped for the OG. We Want OGs season.
Yeah.
We have a lot of requests for us to review, to recap that season. We have some logistical challenges to figure out, though.
Yeah, and I'm going to start here, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, right? I wasn't even really in on this season to begin with. Like, I don't really care for it. So I'm definitely not going to pay money just to watch something that I wasn't really into watching in the first place. So if I had to get Paramount Plus just to watch this season of the challenge that I don't think I'm going to like, but that I might not like, that doesn't really make much sense. So that's where I'm at. And I think, overall, I'll let you go. But that's where I'm at.
Well, I'm with you. I mean, I don't consider myself a cheap person, but I'm at a point in my life where I resent how many streaming services we're supposed to have. Again, I think I've referred to this on the podcast, but I'll just be straight up. My cousin, who Sheldon knows and is also friends with, is a very successful actress by the name of Cara G. She is one of the lead actors on the science fiction show The Expanse on Amazon Prime. I don't have Amazon Prime, even though she's like a sister to me, because I'm at a point where I don't want any more streaming services. And like Sheldon and I both have cable, obviously. That's how we watch the challenge. And like, so we're going to have to, perhaps, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to find out some morally gray ways of finding this. And I'm just going to say it straight up. Aside from the challenge, there is nothing on Paramount Plus that interests me. Like,
two things. Yeah. Well,
am I going to watch NCIS or Blue Bloods? Do I look 65? Good Lord.
So there's a chance that we could hope that it ends up on ctv.ca.
True.
Right? Which could be a thing. Who knows? And, normally a lot of these things, they're behind corporately and trying to promote things that people might be looking for. So maybe it'll pop up there. Secondly, though, I want to say this explains a lot. Meaning, this now sums up to me why this season of the challenge has been the way that it was in terms of toned down and PG-13, because they knew that they were coming with the season of the challenge that they wanted to piggyback on, but then also promote and sell to Paramount Plus, or sell you Paramount Plus as a, but you have to sell that to everybody. So you're not going to have a show that's, not R-rated, but, normal season of the challenge where they're doing the drinking and partying and hooking up. And that's going to be such a focal point. You're not going to do that and then have a season of the challenge that you're going to try to get people to subscribe to, again, as John just mentioned, in an era where you already have so many other things that you subscribe to. So what do you try to do? You try to dumb it down. You make it, and I say dumb it down, but you know what I'm saying, right? You make it more family friendly, let's say, right? So now you get people in by making this season more family friendly. Then you piggyback on that with another season that you're going to put on Paramount Plus. This all makes sense to me now as to why we were wondering, why are things so toned down this season? To me, I think, and I don't know, but I think that makes sense.
The other thing is that, let's not kid ourselves. I think MTV could make space in its busy schedule of ridiculousness to squeeze in some MTV, some other original content.
That is true. We can figure this out. And there's time for us to figure this out. And of course, we want to figure this out in terms of having the conversation with you guys as well, in terms of our listeners and our followers. If this is something you guys are into and you guys really want it to happen, we'll figure out a way to, watch this season. What's not going to happen though, and I'll say this beforehand, is I'm not really going to talk about that other season until this season is done, right? There's not going to be two podcasts, one recapping this and the other. That's not a thing that's going to happen. So, we'll kind of leave it there for now. And in the meantime, we'll take your comments and see what the people are saying.
There is one more wrinkle that might not apply to, it won't apply to double agents. It might apply to the OG's season.
Yeah.
And if there's whatever follows up double agents, and that is, and it's not really common knowledge, but you know this, Sheldon, is that this July and August, I'm going to be in Tokyo for the Olympics. As long as the Olympics still happen, I'm going to be going to cover them for my day job. And I'm not going to have the time, nor will I have cable to review. And also, you think our schedules were challenging before? A 14-hour time difference.
Yeah. So that also,
issue.
Let's be honest, that's a realistic thing. So yeah, we'll figure it out as we always do. And somehow, some way, you guys are included in the conversation and, to be honest, in the decision as well. So we will take that into account. Does that mean that we will for sure do the season? No. But we do want to hear from you guys and let us know what you think, because, we have a great family that we've built here in terms of a challenge fam that we appreciate, and we like taking in all the comments, obviously. So, of course, when something like this pops up, we want to hear from you and hear what you guys think.
And we love, and we are flattered that so many people want us to take on that show. And this isn't the first time. There have been people who have asked us in the past to review, to recap Big Brother, to recap Big Brother Canada.
Well, if you think about it, if you think about it in the very beginning, we weren't going to do the Champs versus Stars season.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we ended up loving it. And we got really into it. So
exactly.
It's not off the table. We just have some kinks to iron out, I think.
In the wise words of Kevin Garnett, anything is possible. Anything is possible. Okay. Is anything possible though for Nani? That is my question. See, no. that was a D-level segue by me. I'm just not on my game today. Terrible segue by me.
As you said it, I was like, I don't see how he's gonna pull this off.
I paused in the middle too, right?
Oh.
I paused in the middle. I was like, I was caught in the air making the pass. Your coach tells you, your high school coach tells you, don't jump to make a pass. I definitely jumped, and I was like, oh no.
In lacrosse, we call that a suey. You were going up for a suey, and it was no good. Do you know
Oh,
that
is that
expression?
what? No, but that makes so much sense
It's a
because
suicide pass, right? Like when
yeah,
you
yeah,
throw,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. But on Levitard's show, they always say "suey," like they always say that.
yeah.
Ah, I wonder if
So
that.
a
Anyways,
sui is a suicide pass where
I
you
like
make
it. Yeah,
your
yeah,
teammate extend too far, so they're like
yeah,
squared up for a hit. Um, so speaking of a suicide pass, uh, Fessy goes in to speak to Aneesa to sort of
yeah,
like clear the air,
yeah,
and like I love Aneesa. Aneesa has a great episode,
yeah,
but and she's trying not to be bitter,
yeah.
but
You could tell Anissa, much like me watching this, and I'm sure you and a lot of other people watching this are over Fessy's act. Like, just get out of here,
yeah,
right? Like, we know how this is how you wanted it to play out. So don't pretend now that you actually want to see me succeed. Because if you wanted to see me succeed, you would have been happier being my partner beforehand. Instead, you were waiting for this to happen. So don't pretend now.
I always say this. Fessy brings some things to the table, both as like a competitor on the show and like for a viewing experience.
Yeah,
One of them is not his intelligence
yeah,
because he can go and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, this is the way it worked out." But my guy, they've got what like 9 episodes of him talking shit in
yeah.
confessional. Like,
No, for sure.
maybe he's trying to smooth it over in the house, but it like that's not going to work.
No, not at all.
And
Uh,
by contrast, we've got Kyle then calls a team meeting with Aneesa, and
yeah.
it goes over so well. Like they're laughing,
Oh
they're
yeah.
like I don't want to make it sound like there's like sexual tension, but she's touching his arm. She's laughing super hard, saying in the confessional, like she even says, like, "Hey, at least my new partner is way funnier than my old partner."
Yeah. No,
But
it was funny, that convo. And Kyle has a gift of gab, right? And that's what makes it so interesting in that moment as well.
well, we can say like, "Oh, Kyle's like running game and being smooth," but also what's the difference between how Fessy approached it and Kyle approached it is Kyle to some degree like owned his side of like how shit had gone sideways between him and Aneesa.
Totally.
He says like, "I'm sorry I called you dead weight. I'm sorry that I just brought up the dead weight comments," which first of all, that's my line of the episode. I thought it was very funny.
Mhm.
But also like he's saying like, okay, here's my side of things. I was pissed about these things, but it's actually like a sincere, genuine thing.
Yeah. I thought it was really cool too to see. And, the reality is that's the situation they're in. So you got to roll with it and make the best of it. And that's what they were doing. And it's a great sign because there's different kinds of partners you can have in the house, right? You have the partners who you could get with someone and they're mad and angry and they're just terrible to be around. And these are two people where even if they aren't happy with the situation, they're good enough people that you could still have fun, you could still rock with, you could still, be a team.
You can see that they both have like what they bring to the table for both of them is higher um, like a higher EQ, like better empathy,
Yeah.
not just to each other but in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're both like socially quite smart. Like you never hear anyone complain about Kyle or Aneesa
Yeah.
in the house. Like they might
Also
not
true.
want to be partnered with them. They might not like their political game. But like no one's saying like, "Ugh, I can't believe I have to like share a room with Kyle," or like,
Yeah.
"Ugh, like I can't like." People love hanging out with Aneesa and Kyle, and like you know that they get along for real.
Yeah.
And also Kyle makes the very fair point, both to Aneesa and in confessional, they have to win. They have to win this daily challenge because women want Aneesa's gold skull and men want Kyle's gold skull. Like they know that they are the weak links or
Totally.
perceived as the weak links.
And that's
That's
what was
my way of putting
interesting about, the early part of this episode because you had, okay, well, here's a new pairing, new couple in terms of Kyle and Aneesa, but that doesn't change the stakes for everyone else in the house. And it led to conversation with Darrell and Leroy and then even Corey. And it's all about the same thing, them trying to figure out, okay, well, we all need to win because either Corey needs to win so he can put himself in, or Darrell or Leroy need to win so they can keep themselves out of going into the elimination. And the interesting part I thought was Corey trying to ask to be the house vote already. And both Darrell and Leroy were like, nah, it's too early for that. Like you can't make those plays now, right? Like you have to see who's going to win because it's going to change everything.
I thought I was really interested by this scene. So Darrell and Leroy are working out, they're talking about game, and then like Corey comes out, makes that request you just mentioned. And I know some of it was editing.
Yeah.
But there was a pregnant pause that Corey should not have felt comfortable with. Like it was not a fuck yeah from either Leroy or Darrell. One thing I like about this whole circumstance is that unlike last episode, everyone's invested again in the daily challenge.
Yes.
Right? Like everyone has skin in the game. Everyone wants to win because just the format of the show is finally coming through and making winning this competition a necessity. And it's refreshing.
Totally. And, you look at just the situation that everyone's in. From that conversation, it goes to Leroy, who Leroy at this point is like, I'm just not talking to anybody until this challenge takes place. I'm not talking to anybody because everyone's just trying to make plans. Everyone's trying to like see each other's cards, and nothing good is going to come from any conversation that I have between now and then. I just thought that was funny, man. Leroy is already such a good and like lovable character. And I thought that, this episode, you just continue to see that. Like it just continues to emphasize that, right? Like it was super funny.
I'm glad you mentioned that Leroy is such like a relatable, like beloved guy on the character, castmate on the show. Because first of all, obviously we know this is his planned last season.
Yeah.
But also we're at a point where I basically like everyone in the house.
Yeah.
I don't love Fessy. I don't love Amber.
No, I know what you're saying, though.
But aside from that, like, there's no one that I particularly like. I'm sort of neutral on Casey, but I don't dislike Casey. I mean, she's not annoying. She's quiet.
Yeah.
But aside from that, like, I like Kyle. I like Darrell. I like Corey. I like Nani. Like, you name. Big T, CT, like just the whole gang, like they're just like fun, good people. So it makes I like Aneesa, so it makes for interesting times.
Yeah, and the interesting times continue in the sense of Aneesa and Corey talking, and Corey tells Aneesa that he wants to go in and he wants to go in against her partner Kyle, which obviously is an interesting scenario because Aneesa and Kyle are partners. So that led to a funny kind of situation because obviously Aneesa tells Kyle is super salty, and he said he's going to play dirty. If that's the case and they lose and he has to go in against Corey, he's going to play dirty. And I just thought that was super funny because it's like, Kyle, how are you surprised by that? Right? Like you can't be surprised at it, but that's just Kyle. And I reference that because it's going to come up again later on when you see how someone else handles it. And, we'll get there. We'll talk about it. But let's get to the actual challenge, right? Because I thought this challenge was super cool. And it looked really cool. It looked really hard. And, Mission Undercover, I think that's what it was called.
It was.
Basically, you're deep diving and, water that runs into two tectonic plates. And I was watching the episode. As I watched the episode, right, I knew exactly what was going to happen in terms of them trying to get the people to describe it. And I sat there and I thought, this is where they need John to pop up in the bottom corner of the screen to fully explain what this is. Because I know that I don't even have to say anything at all. That as soon as it comes up, John's going to be like, well, you see.
And should I do that now?
And action.
So a tectonic plate is the Earth's crust is actually sort of a collection of floating, moving plates, really. And underneath, obviously, is the magma, like the hot core of the Earth. And whenever there's an earthquake, that is tectonic plates shifting, and they can rub against each other. Mountain ranges are created when one tectonic plate sort of slides up over top of the other one, and sometimes gets wedged in. For we North Americans, the most famous one would be there's a tectonic plate, and half of California is on it, and half of it is not.
Yeah.
Which is why they have so many earthquakes. It affects our brothers and sisters out west in Canada, in British Columbia. Over there, it shifts to the west. But there's also, they can create giant crevices.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they're swimming in a tectonic plate crevice. So there's sort of a gap between the two, obviously filled with water. Yeah. And it's very still and clear because it's not like a river. Like it's not like your standard body of water. Which
made for a dope looking challenge. Like it was really, really cool.
It was so cinematic. It was gorgeous. I want to do that. Like that seems so cool.
See, this was one of those challenges where I was like, I feel like I'd be terrified to do it, but I feel like I would have to just because it would be so cool and just for the experience. Like that's the part that seemed really cool. And, you know, we're not going to break down every single person that went because the reality is most of the people didn't complete it, right? In reality. But the thing to me that was really cool was seeing, because you saw the real reactions that a lot of the people had to this because they were okay maybe with the swimming, but then they got kind of nervous. And because they got nervous, they lost track of their air. Right. And that was a real thing that me as a viewer watching it and thinking, oh, I might struggle with this. It was relatable because it was like, oh, I could see that happening to me. So I wonder what that would be like. And no, sorry, go on.
I was going to say breathing through a rebreather is, on the one hand, it's easy because you just breathe. You breathe through your mouth, but you just breathe. But it's weird because you sort of have to make a conscious effort to breathe. And
I was
going to say, when you combine that with like the cold and that they have a task to complete and they have to like, as soon as they go underwater, get their bearings. And like, sometimes it is hard to dive like deep into water and to like kick your way down, to pull yourself down.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why the teams that did well at this did well was they had the presence of mind to use the guide ropes.
Yes.
There's a couple teams that tried to swim the whole way and they struggled.
Definitely. And you mentioned the breathing aspect. And I thought Leroy did the best job of kind of explaining that whole thing. And I was so proud of Leroy watching this because I know I feel like I mentioned this, I'm a broken record every week, but there's longtime viewers of this show, The Challenge, right? And for those longtime viewers, you know that Leroy, most famously, couldn't swim for the longest time, would struggle, and like that would be his demise every single season. As soon as swimming would come up, he would struggle. And he's been on the show for long enough, and part of what we've seen is his improved swimming. But even if you can swim, this challenge still might be difficult or still might be scary for some people because this is a completely different kind of swimming skill. And to see Leroy be the one to say, you know what, just take a deep breath. He's like, I had to, check myself and take a deep breath and just breathe. And then because I was getting nervous, I was like, oh no, how's Leroy going to do? And my guy did amazing, right? Of course, him and Casey were one of the groups that actually finished because there's only 3, right? It was Casey and Leroy, CT and Cam, and Cam killed it as well too. Cam was saying that she was really nervous, but she just kept going. And then of course, Kyle and Aneesa. But everyone else, one person on each team, one of the people on the teams that didn't make it basically got disqualified. And I mean, so for me, I didn't know how Leroy would do, but he did so well that I was like, that's awesome. I thought that was really cool.
I thought it was actually quite close, and then it turned out that TJ said that actually Kyle and Aneesa blew the other teams out of the water.
Yeah.
Which, like, I had the sense that they had won.
Okay.
But apparently it wasn't close. I did want to point out one dynamic that was interesting.
Okay, because I have one too.
All right. I was struck by the power dynamic between Cam and CT. And they both sort of addressed it in their confessionals that, like, they both have big personalities. They're both used to being sort of the leaders in their partnerships.
Yep.
And like, if you think about, say, when Kyle and Cam were partners,
Yeah.
Kyle for sure would take the back seat. And like CT with Big T would for sure take the back seat.
Big back seat.
The big back seat. What struck me though was both Cam and CT are good at puzzles. But what part of the conflict was that CT was trying to break the puzzle. CT was trying to skip steps. He just looked at the letters and was like, there's obviously 6 letters. I'm just going to see what we have and figure it out from there. Whereas Cam was trying to go through the process.
Yeah.
And they were getting in their way. Because CT has spent so much time around Wes and Johnny Bananas.
Exactly.
His approach is always like, how can I break the game?
Exactly. Totally.
Because that's what those two do, and to much success. And to a lesser extent, Jordan and Ashley, like we're talking like the elite all time, like top 10 players. They also tend to break games. So CT was in that mindset. Cam was trying to, this makes Cam sound lame. She's not lame at all, but she was trying to follow the process.
No,
and
totally.
that was the heart of their conflict.
Totally agree with you, man. And, the other interesting part that I found funny was the dynamic the other way on Fessy and Nani. And Fessy actually like kicking Nani in the head and just like racing ahead, and she lost her bearings and got disqualified. Summed it up perfectly. And I mean, not really surprising either. But let's keep things moving though, because as you mentioned, Aneesa and Kyle win, much to the surprise of everyone, including, I think, them, right? Because, again, a great job by the producers and a great job by the editors, because the way that they were able to put that together, I thought was really cool to, have the suspense of who won and TJ's script in terms of, 2 teams did really, really well, but they were surpassed by that's just great TV, reality TVing. I just made that up. But you know what I'm saying, right? I thought that was really cool.
I think this was the best case scenario from a television perspective. Because by definition, those 2 winning meant that a team that had gold skulls and was part of like sort of the network of alliances was going in no matter what.
Exactly.
And to use a Dungeons and Dragons phrase, which I know you're a big Dungeon Master guy.
Sure.
Kyle is a chaotic neutral. Like Kyle loves to stir shit up. And even, I think it was Fessy even says, I don't like it when Kyle's in power because I don't know what he's going to do.
Exactly.
And Kyle, of anyone left in the house, Kyle is most inclined just to stir shit up for the sake of stirring shit up. We spoke about this earlier in the season, how he and Devin's strategy was to like just wreak havoc and like hope to come out the other side. Now he's in a position to do just that.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was a part that I found super interesting as well. Just seeing how that was going to break down, because it was too obvious that if they didn't win, it was going to be Kyle and Aneesa going in. So it was key for them to win, and it just led to the decision making that would have to go on afterwards, which was basically Kyle and Leroy brokering a deal, essentially, right? And that meant that Leroy had to vote in Darrell. And, I mentioned this earlier. I touched on this earlier in terms of the way that Kyle was acting when he found out Corey wanted to go against him, right? And once Darrell, because I think the way that Leroy handled this was correct in terms of going to Darrell and telling him, hey, this is kind of what's presented in front of me, and I have no other options. Like, this is kind of what I have to do. And he gives Darrell the heads up, and Darrell's not really happy about it, but he still handled it, I think, in a very Darrell way. Like, you could tell that he was mad. He talked a little bit of shit, like, oh, well, I'm going to come back anyways. But he wasn't like mad at Leroy. He didn't like go to Kyle and get mad about it. Like, he just was like, whatever. Okay, cool. That's what y'all want to do. That's what y'all want to do. And I thought that was interesting. But Darrell's also an OG that's super confident in himself. So it was interesting how that all played out. That's what I'm saying.
I'm not sure how old Darrell is at this point, but like he's got to be in his late 30s or early 40s. Like I picture him as older than you and I.
Yeah.
And I turn 38 in a month. So,
well, could Darrell conceivably be on that OG season?
He is on it.
Oh, he is. Oh,
yeah. He and Aneesa are on it.
Oh, so there's no rest for them. Okay.
No. So, and to me, that's like the difference between like a 40-year-old and like a 27-year-old, where a 40-year-old is just like, man, I just like the only solution to this is I gotta win.
Yeah.
And then like, and Darrell even says in conversation with Amber, like, I would do the same thing. Like, I'm not happy about this, but I would do the same thing. So
he gets it. Of course he gets it, right? Of course he
goes.
Gets it. He's been on enough seasons to have every kind of scenario play out for him. And so he's probably had to make that decision before, right? So he totally gets it. I mean, this kind of led to an easy deliberation because the House vote basically was going to be for Darrell. Like, that's just what it came down to. And, you know, that was the only way that the House could control Kyle, quote unquote, in a sense. And it was a smart strategy. It was a good job for them to figure that part of it out, that you don't just put Corey in, because if you just put Corey in, you leave the door wide open for Kyle to do anything. So that was a smart play by the rest of the House. And that's the strategy stuff that we love about this show, right? Like when they're breaking down that side of things to see how all the chess pieces are moved, that's what makes this game interesting, but made for a boring deliberation.
It did make for a boring deliberation. The other thing is, if like they have to vote in Corey and they are in a tough spot because, again, I guess they're really banking on Aneesa, but Kyle's entirely capable of being like, screw it, we're putting in Fessy and Nani or whoever, right? Like, and just like, I'm going to play off people against each other. And this is a great position for Aneesa and Kyle, that they could get rid of someone who would be tougher competition than what they want in the final.
Totally agree. And, you know, you end up in this matchup where it is Corey versus Darrell. And we've seen this elimination already before, just modified a little differently. And the one thing that I think they didn't explain properly was how the resistance worked, right? Because I was expecting this to be, you know, like you're just on a separate court, meaning that when you just go around, it's you just having to basically pull yourself closest to the thing. What I didn't realize was that because it was set up based on speed and you had to run around the cones, essentially, if you were the first one around by a lot, there is no real resistance. And
which is what happened to Corey.
Exactly. And I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't anticipate that was going to be the outcome, but he won 2 in a row very easily over Darrell. And if I had known it was just like a speed competition, right, you probably would have said, yeah, Corey has a chance. Like, I wonder if that would have changed, you know, who you would put in to that elimination, right? So that's an interesting part as well, where you didn't want to give Kyle that option to mess around.
What occurred to me is that there were so many people still in the house or who had been on this season that were better suited. Like, you know who would have absolutely crushed this, like done better than Corey? Nelson.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
it's very true.
And Jordan. Not that Jordan was on this season, but
no, I know what you're saying though.
Those two are probably the fastest, like, regular cast members these days.
Yeah.
The other people who would do well is, I bet Fessy is pretty fast. Like, you can't be running at NFL combines and not have some speed. And also, if you're not that fast, Fessy would excel at the resistance side of things.
Yeah.
Right?
No, totally.
Would also do well.
Totally agree. Well, Corey did do well. And to the victor in this situation, Corey gets to pick his partner, and he very quickly chooses Cam. It's an interesting thing that everyone is just sold on Cam being the de facto best partner, or maybe he did that as well because he didn't want to take Casey from Leroy because he wanted to, be cool with Leroy still. Like that could be a thing. But either way, he picks Cam. CT then picks Big T. And I think that was a nice touch. But what did you make of CT picking Big T?
I don't think she was thrilled to be back with him again. I think she's still hurt by what he said. We never really, after their sort of his attempt at an apology and the ensuing blow up between them, they didn't really, from what we've seen, it doesn't seem like they've buried the hatchet.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we'll get some of that maybe next week, I think. But no, you're totally right.
One thing I did like about CT was that he didn't say, I'm going to go back with Big T. He asked her permission.
Yes. That was
which is like a subtle thing, but it's nice that he asked her. And she said yes.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. That's a good way to go about it, for sure. Totally agree.
And he had said in confessionals from both of the last two daily challenges that he actually thinks he would have done better with Big T in both. Mm-hmm. And I agree.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly think, I know Cam is all salty that he didn't choose her. I don't think Cam and CT would have had the success that they've had this season if they were partnered throughout. I think their personalities are too strong. I don't think their skill sets complement each other well. I don't think their temperaments complement each other well. Like, there was something to really be said about Big T handling the politics because she's a much calmer, nicer person than CT.
Totally agree with you. And I'll say this much, man. This is what makes the challenge the greatest show. Because I say this all the time, but you think that the show is about one thing and it's all about having like the biggest, fastest, strongest partner. But how you work with that partner is so much more important than like the physical attributes of said person that you could be paired with. Right. And it adds like such another dynamic to it and such another layer that it's tough to quantify, but when it doesn't work, you see exactly why it doesn't work. And this was a perfect example of that. Totally agree. On paper, Cam and CT should just work and be like a dominant couple. And maybe over time, maybe that could be the case. But in the short term, we haven't seen that.
Well, and we saw another example of that. Kyle and Aneesa had a great episode. On paper, not the powerhouse team that CT and Cam are, but they have good chemistry. They like each other. They respect each other. They could speak to each other in a calm, rational fashion. They're supportive of each other. There you go. There's one other thing that I want to point out before we move on to our lines of the episode and MVPs, and that is Amber B is now the rogue agent, which is interesting because it's clear that the final sort of regular season episode of the season is going to be a women's elimination.
Yeah.
And in my mind, she would be the ideal candidate to go up against, but you can't call down a rogue agent, which puts, in my mind, Nani on the hot seat. What do you think?
Totally agree, but it's going to be interesting because the numbers and how the numbers play out, it's Nani, Cam, Casey, or, well, not even Amber B, or Big T, right? So
or Aneesa.
Or Aneesa. So you assume Big T is going to be sent in, and are they going to try to gang up on Aneesa? That's going to be the assumption, right? Because Aneesa doesn't have the numbers. And so they're going to have to basically win again, no?
Yeah.
So
I think
that'll be interesting to see.
What was your line of the episode?
Mine was at the very end, actually, with Kyle when he's talking about Darrell, and he said, I'm happy to see the back of him. I'm happy to see the shine of his head go. Just because Kyle's talking about running the final against Darrell would have been really tough because Darrell, any final he's been in, he's won. So Kyle wasn't too upset in terms of seeing Darrell go. I thought that was pretty funny.
I already said it, but Kyle had my lines of the episode. all in that interaction he had with Aneesa, where he called a little team meeting. He's like, he goes, "I talked so much trash about you, and then I'm sorry I called you deadweight, and I'm sorry I brought up the deadweight again." Like that had me laughing out loud. That was great. Who was your MVP of the episode? Who killed it for you this week?
To me, this is easy. It's Aneesa. And the reason why it's Aneesa is because of the viewpoint of her coming in, meaning everyone thought of her as, well, as you just said, dead weight. And, she's a terrible partner, terrible person to be with. And, the perception of her was at a very low point of the season. And I'm sure her self-confidence was at a low point of the season, despite of how well she was putting up with it, right? And then you get to this challenge, which arguably could be one of the hardest challenges of the season. And not only does she do well, but she dominates. Like, her and Kyle dominate that challenge. And it's not like, as Fessy would put it, he carried Aneesa. Like, that wasn't the case at all. They both did the swimming, obviously. They both came up around the same time. Like, I think she was a little bit after him. But in terms of the puzzle, as you just mentioned, what's more important? How you work with that partner. And they were able to figure things out. And Kyle, they had the good back and forth where they each kind of took a stab at it. And then finally Kyle was like, oh, this is it. But that's all teamwork, right? And part of being a good partner is letting your other person cook while you, right? Because I think they kind of split it. Like, she kind of figured out like what the code was, and then Kyle figured out what the word was, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, you got that.
That to me is just teamwork at its finest. And because of where Aneesa was perspective-wise, and then where she came out in a must-win situation, got to give her credit. Now, can she do it again next week? We'll see.
Just to be slightly difficult, I'm going to say that Kyle was the MVP. Mm-hmm. I agree with everything you said about Aneesa, but for me, Kyle gets the edge just because he had better lines. He was funnier because he did basically everything that Aneesa did. He was also in a must-win situation. Yeah. He completed a puzzle for maybe the first time in his challenge career.
Yeah.
And I mean, they both had a great episode, and it made me realize how much I want to see both of them in the final and succeed. And I already alluded to this, but I basically like everyone that's left in the house. Fessy and Amber B are at the bottom of the list, but like, I don't hate them. They're not like, I don't know, the Joshes of this world that I can't stand. Like, they're sort of below average.
No, I agree with you. I agree with that.
Where can the good people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander, Instagram and YouTube, Sheldon Alexander, and of course our new Twitch channel, which we got up, On Blast Podcast. And wherever you get this podcast as well, like and subscribe, Apple Podcasts, and keep following the movement that is a You Killed It pod. And again, send in your comments. What do you guys think we should do for the upcoming season? We see all the feedback. We see it all. We read it all. So looking forward to hearing from you. And where can the people hear from you, man?
They can get at me at Jay Chidley Hill on Twitter and Instagram. I also want to say, we got a whole bunch of comments about bedmass versus pedmass versus oddmass, I think was the third one.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that we did not get to talk about them. We were sort of on a tight recording window today.
We'll save it in the tuck for next week.
Yeah, I'll save all my spicy hot math takes to go back 20 years.
I mean, where else can you go? Where else can you go for bed mass versus ped mass, and also info on tectonic plates? I mean, we got you covered.
It's scary that you're having me dip into science, because I'm not a scientician.
You got me fooled, man. I see what you did there, by the
way. Until next week, this was You Killed It.
Yeah, I can't yell again, but
I'll do it. I'll do it. Hold on, I got it. You killed it.
Not bad.
I'm not as good as you, but
not bad though.
I tried.
On blast.